In the world of podcasting, everyone is chasing the dream of making big money. But we really need to also start thinking about the impact that we want to create with our podcast. I know that sometimes when we focus on the wrong numbers, it becomes really hard to keep going. It becomes really hard to want to do this. In this episode, to take a look at some of the areas in your podcast that you could be missing the mark that are preventing you from growth, from making the money you want, and of course, from making that giant impact. Because I know you're not here to make a ripple, you're here to make those tsunamis of change. So let's have a deep conversation about this. Welcome to the Cure for Pod Fade. I am so excited you found your way here because that means you know how powerful podcasting can be. You are ready to build a legacy with your unique story, your message, and your offer, but you're getting a little overwhelmed. You're feeling frustrated, you're feeling stuck. You just don't know how to grow your show, find a new audience, and make some money. Podcasting can be the ticket to the life of your dreams, and it doesn't have to be as hard as you think. We're talking about all the ingredients it takes to be a successful, profitable podcaster without that icky overwhelm, because you are too magical to join the 85% plus club that pod fades away. I'm your host, Jen Dragonette, so let's make podcasting easy peasy lemon squeezy. I've been having a lot of conversations lately about numbers, whether that's download numbers, whether that's about the ROI that we're getting from our show. I've been having a lot of conversations around numbers and how these numbers are screwing with our head. And I think that this is driving, which you will see coming in January. The Cure for Pod Fade is going to get a rebrand upgrade, because I want to focus on this. I really, as I've been digging into the cure, I think there's a lot of reasons that podcasts fail. I mean, over 85% of podcasters out there, you guys stop podcasting. And it's not that your message is bad. It's not that you aren't good enough. It's not that people didn't want to listen. You may have just been focused on the wrong thing. So let's talk about some of those numbers. I mean, and we're talking everything from stats to profits to the amount of posts you should be making to grow your business on social media. These numbers can really put you in a tailspin, they have made me miserable. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I increase my numbers of posts across all the platforms, then I'll increase my business. No, the opposite happened. Then I started thinking about, okay, well, these download numbers. And as my downloads grew, all of a sudden, the numbers that I was getting wasn't good enough anymore. And I was really sad because I had a client that just reached a huge milestone, a seven-figure download milestone. And she didn't want to share with her audience because she assumed that her audience, seeing that she had only hit this one mark, that they wouldn't value her show because they already thought that they had way more downloads than that. And I was like, okay, it took me a minute. I took a step back and I was like, okay, these numbers are really screwing with our heads. The ROI from our podcast is screwing with our heads. And next week, I'm really excited to bring you one of my mentors, Andrew. And we're having this conversation in a deeper way of how to put profits into your podcast plan where you don't lose sight of your growth and you don't repel people. And I'm really excited. So come back next week. You're going to love that episode. It's actually a 2-part episode. So we're going to finish the year out with retraining our brains of what we should be focusing on. Because here's the thing, and I heard it when I went to Podcast Evolution in Vegas and all these things, like we're so focused. How many downloads do you have? How many this? How many that? There's just so many things around this that just piss me off. One is, okay, sponsorships. Yeah, they want a lot of downloads to pay you because they will pay you per listen or whatever. The thing is I can buy listens. I bought 30,000 downloads for, I think it was like $110. But you know what that 30,000 downloads got me? Nothing. They were supposed to be Apple Podcast downloads, and it didn't even register in Apple that they were downloads. So when you see these people that are getting all these huge things, we got to start comparing ourselves to ourselves. We've got to start comparing ourselves to what we desire. So we have to start being that horse in the parade that has those blinders on. So that's what I want to talk to you about and want you to start thinking about right now with the numbers that you're focusing on. And if they're screwing with your head, which is screwing with your content, and when your content is off because you're misaligned, you're not going to attract in those listeners that are going to want to stick around. So here's what I want you to start thinking about. It's like, what is your actual purpose for this? Yes, we all love money. We all want to make money. We want to be paid for our services and our gifts. That's a given. But if that is where you're approaching your podcast from, it is going to come across as a sales pitch. We need to redirect the conversation to, okay, what kind of an impact do you want to make? How can you make a change? How can you serve? How can you set yourself up? What feels good to you? So for me, in this Cure for Pod Fade, why this whole, like, the overall theme of like curing pod fade and getting people to stick around in podcasting, even though podcasting takes work, podcasting takes time. It's a very, very, very slow build, is because it is such a powerful tool that can leave a legacy. It's not like social media where you spend all this time creating a reel or a TikTok video and you spend hours editing it. Okay, you spend that amount of time. Let's say you spend an hour on a 15-minute show. That podcast can last for years and decades, where that piece of social media content, you get 15 seconds. And just to let you guys know, it's 11 a.m. right now. And I feel like that's a sign that we're on the right track. But the thing about this is that we need to come back to the core. So why do you want to help people doing the thing that you're doing? What is the step that you can give people to move forward to reach this level? I always say, don't be a ripple. We want to be a tsunami. So a ripple is the people that throw out that little pebble and the little ripple comes. The tsunamis, there's so much energy that's generated behind a tsunami before it hits land. And I want you to be that energy that builds up that entire giant tsunami wave that comes in. And it basically comes in, washes out everything and pulls out the stuff that's not set down, the stuff that's not sturdy, the stuff that's not stable. So when you start looking at that in life, it's not that I want it to be this destructive force, but I look at it as like you're a tsunami coming in and you are taking back out all the things that don't have a strong foundation so that you can rebuild in a manner that is better, that leaves it better than before. You can rebuild without having to break the bank. You can rebuild with all these things. So I want you to really start focusing on what is the core mission of your podcast. If you have a business podcast, what is the core mission? Are you really there just teaching strategy? Maybe you have a show on SEO and how to use SEO and how to grow your website and YouTube or whatever it is. Okay, well, why is that a benefit? Let's start adding some human back into the strategy. And if that's not you, then add your personality, your flavor. But know that you're trying to serve first. If your podcast just becomes an infomercial, people aren't going to come back. So yes, profits should be 100% part of your umbrella strategy. Big part of it. But what you really need to come at each episode with is, how can I serve? How can I serve you today? For me, in this episode, I want to serve you saying, okay, it's time to shift the mindset around what you're focused on, because we can't let ourselves get screwed in the head by being like, our numbers are so low on our downloads. The profits haven't been profitable yet. Yeah, well, I work with some big shows. I work with some really big shows that have been out for 5+ years. And it took about 4 to 5 years for many of these shows. Like, I'm thinking of my 3 biggest shows that I work on right now. It took about 4 years for them to actually start seeing the traction. They got from the 0 to 1,000 relatively quickly, but to go beyond that, it took years and years of building consistency. And it's not about creating more social media graphics. It's not about creating all these clips. It's about connecting with other humans. My personal business has grown 100% through through my podcasts, with nurturing through social media. And how that looked to me was having interviews, networking, having the ability to go on other people's shows, showing up at podcast events. That is the core of my business, which actually helps me grow. I don't get people from social media. I don't do that. It's normally, I'm going to say 99.9% starts somehow connected to podcasting. Whether that's me inviting them in, them inviting me on, having a conversation, and then it's been word of mouth. So between word of mouth and my podcast, that's where my business has been built. I nurture. I give the quick nurtures. I'm able to have the conversations on social media platforms, but you don't have to be on every single platform to grow. A lot of people, when they go to different platforms, you've got to think about their reason for being there and their mentality in that state. Social media, people are coming on for that scroll hole, for mindless, for quick hits. They're not necessarily coming to listen to a 10-minute live, a 20-minute live. They're looking for those quick hits that entertain, give them value. Great. You can do that with a podcast too. But when you have a podcast listener, you have captured their attention, and that is where the magic lies, is that you're with me, that you might still be here. It's 12 minutes long. You might be in your shower. Like, I wish I could change Jen, but I'm stuck with her now because my hands are wet. Whatever it is, you are listening to me. So this is a great opportunity to shift that focus off of just make money, and to start shifting that focus on like, okay, let's have this conversation. Let's make this work. Let's build my network. Podcasting has given me so much beyond my income. It's given me friends. It's sent me to Costa Rica. It has allowed me to have the opportunity to go visit my clients all over the country. It's given me the opportunity to talk to some amazing humans that I would have had no reason to actually have a conversation with. Because if somebody asked me to have a coffee chat, I'm not normally going to do it. Because what value does that provide? Are you just going to sell me? Of course, I love going out for coffee with my friends, but with a stranger, it's so much harder than saying, hey, let's have a conversation on my podcast. I'd love to have you on. And it can be that easy. But that's the thing, is that when you get in your head in these wrong areas, the amount of money that's coming in because you just started 6 months ago, blah, 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 and the money's not coming in, the downloads aren't coming in, but you're focused and you're just like, you're an infomercial. Of course it's not going to grow. So I want you to start looking at your content and how you're serving your audience. That's what I want you to start doing, because that's where the magic's going to happen. So don't forget, next week, Andrew is telling us when and how to monetize and how to grow our audience. That's his specialty. So I will see you next week. Go out, make today amazing, because you are beautiful, you are wonderful, and you are worthy. Let's do this.